Max. A lot like you, trying to control his mind and finally escape the cycle of overthinking, fear of failure, and endless anxiety. He's watched all the self-improvement videos that go on and on about routines and waking up early, yet nothing changes. Frustrated, he's ready for something real, something that actually works. That's where Musashi's raw, unfiltered philosophy comes in, a path of small steps, building mental strength every day. Through Max's journey, you'll uncover what it really takes to master your mind. Part 1. Call to Adventure. Max had hit his limit. Every self-help trick, every wake up at 5 a.m. routine had led him nowhere. He was exhausted from trying to follow advice that never seemed to fit, feeling more stuck than ever. Late one night, frustrated, he scrolled aimlessly, hoping to find something real, something different. That's when he stumbled upon Miyamoto Musashi's words. Unlike all the advice Max had tried, Musashi's philosophy felt raw and honest. Musashi wasn't about routines or surface-level habits. He'd lived by intense discipline, crafting his own path to mental strength. One line hit Max like a shock. You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. Musashi was telling him that self-mastery wasn't one size fits all. Max realized he'd been trying to fit into routines that didn't match who he was. This was a turning point. For the first time, Max understood he didn't need a strict formula or someone else's idea of discipline. Instead, he could focus on finding his own way, just as Musashi had done centuries before. Musashi's approach wasn't about waking up at dawn or following a rigid schedule. It was about understanding himself and building control step by step from the inside out. Max decided to try Musashi's way, starting small. Instead of forcing himself into routines that felt unnatural, he would focus on mastering his mind little by little. This wouldn't be a quick fix, it would be a daily commitment to real change. He began with simple, consistent habits, grounding himself in Musashi's teachings. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose that didn't rely on trendy habits or someone else's checklist. Musashi's philosophy gave him the clarity and focus he'd been missing, a way forward that was entirely his. And so, Max took his first step toward real mental mastery, finally ready to leave behind the noise and follow a path built on his own terms. Part 2. Mentorship begins. Max found a powerful insight in Musashi's philosophy. Control wasn't about huge leaps, but about taking small, intentional steps forward. Musashi once said, "In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close and to take a distanced view of close things." It was about knowing where you wanted to go, but focusing on the immediate steps needed to get there. This idea clicked for Max. Everywhere he looked, he'd been told to think big and set massive goals. Aim for $1 million, make huge transformations right away. But Musashi's approach felt different. Why aim for $1 million when you haven't even learned how to make $10,000 yet? Why set yourself up for burnout before you've mastered the basics? Taking Musashi's words to heart, Max decided to focus on small steps to build control over his mind. Instead of aiming to become a disciplined, perfectly productive person all at once, he set a simple goal: 5 minutes each day of focused attention. It sounded small, but that was the point. Max wasn't trying to change his life in one big leap. He was committing to steady, manageable progress. For those 5 minutes, Max chose one task, whether it was reading a single page, practicing his breathing, or just sitting quietly. He would dedicate his full attention to it, blocking out all distractions. At first, it felt like nothing, just 5 minutes in a day. But as he practiced, Max started noticing a change. His mind wandered less, and those 5 minutes became an anchor. He found himself looking forward to them, a moment of calm in an otherwise hectic day. Before long, 5 minutes turned into 10, and then 15. Max could feel his focus and control growing bit by bit. Musashi's lesson was sinking in. Control and discipline weren't about making dramatic changes overnight. They were about showing up, practicing consistency, and letting those small actions build into something real. Max finally understood. He didn't need to start with a massive goal. Musashi's approach was about becoming better in the present moment, letting those small wins add up. With each focused minute, Max was building a foundation of mental strength, one small step at a time. giving him confidence that he was on the right path. Part 3. Trials and Growth. As Max began to make progress, he quickly found himself facing setbacks. Negative thoughts crept in and doubts about his path started to cloud his mind. Even as he tried to stay focused, the same temptations and worries he'd always struggled with seemed to pull him back. It was frustrating. Just as he was starting to build control, these emotions would flare up, making him question everything. But Musashi had anticipated this. Max came across another quote that felt almost like advice straight to him. Do not fear death so much as the inadequate life. Musashi didn't just mean physical death. He was talking about letting fears and emotions hold you back from living fully. Max realized that if he let these negative feelings control him, he'd never truly break free and live the life he wanted. This led him to Musashi's next lesson, detachment from emotion. Musashi practiced what could be called non-reaction. He didn't let his emotions control his actions, allowing him to stay calm and focused even in battle. Max decided to try applying this idea in his own life. Instead of reacting immediately to every thought and feeling, he began to simply observe them, as if watching clouds pass by in the sky. When a negative thought appeared, he'd acknowledge it without judgment, letting it drift without letting it take control. At first, this wasn't easy. He was so used to reacting automatically. If he felt anxious, he'd let it consume him. If he felt frustrated, he'd focus on it until it wore him down. But with practice, Max started to notice a shift. By watching his thoughts and emotions without engaging, they began to lose their grip on him. He could see them as temporary, fleeting things, rather than letting them define his mood or actions. This practice of detachment helped Max feel a sense of calm he hadn't experienced before. Musashi's lesson was working. By stepping back from his emotions, he was learning that he didn't have to be ruled by them. Each time he observed his thoughts without reacting, he gained a little more control, a little more resilience. Through this practice, Max was able to see that his mind could be a stable place, even when emotions tried to shake it. Part 4. The Big Challenge. Max had been following Musashi's path for a while now, building small habits and practicing detachment. He was finally starting to feel real progress. But just as things seemed to be working, he hit a wall. It was like his inner demons. The voices of doubt, anxiety, and fear suddenly grew louder, pulling him back into his old patterns. A personal crisis struck, a moment that shook him deeply and left him questioning everything. In that moment, the path he'd been following felt impossible to maintain. He was tempted to give it all up, feeling that no amount of self-discipline could quiet the storm inside him. This struggle wasn't just about facing distractions or occasional setbacks. It felt like a battle for control over his mind, a fight between his desire for growth and the darker forces trying to pull him back. Even though Musashi wasn't a Christian, Max remembered something from the Bible. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the forces of darkness in this world. Max realized that this wasn't just about him fighting his own mind. It was a real battle against the forces that held him back from his potential. In times like these, Musashi's teachings became his anchor. One line stood out: perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. Musashi understood that true strength and control come from within, from being present and aware of forces that go beyond what we can physically see. Max realized he needed to stay present and find his center, even when everything inside him felt chaotic. To ground himself, Max practiced a simple exercise. He would take a deep breath, feel the floor beneath him, and let his thoughts fade into the background. He focused on the present, shutting out those voices of doubt. When the inner chaos tried to drag him down, he would center himself in the moment, reminding himself that he didn't need to be at war with his thoughts, just fully aware of them. This practice of grounding became a weapon against the demons inside, a way for Max to stand firm in his own strength. Each time he pulled himself back to the present, he found a renewed sense of calm and focus, a reminder that he was stronger than the forces trying to bring him down. The real battle, he realized, was choosing to stay on the path, even when those voices tried to drag him away. And each time he found his center, he won that battle, step by step, building a life where he could finally fulfill his potential. Part 5. Breakthrough and Mastery. Max sees results. After months of consistent practice, pushing through setbacks, rereading Musashi's teachings, and praying relentlessly for change, Max finally saw a glimmer of progress. It wasn't a massive breakthrough, just a 5% improvement. But to Max, that 5% felt like a huge leap from where he started. He began to see how those small wins stacked up, creating a foundation he could actually build on. He understood now that the journey wasn't linear. Some days felt like steps forward, others like steps back, but he was moving bit by bit. One final lesson from Musashi stood out, something that truly reshaped Max's understanding of mastery. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. Musashi's words helped him see that mastery wasn't a single goal or destination. It was a journey of steady improvement, always aiming to be a little better than before, no matter how small the progress might seem. This realization brought Max a deep sense of peace. Mental control wasn't about reaching some final stage. It was about the daily commitment to keep pushing forward, even when results were hard to see. Each small improvement became a victory in itself, proof that his dedication was paying off, and that gave him the fuel to keep going. With time, Max's transformation became clear. He had gained a level of mental control he hadn't thought possible back when he'd started. His progress wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was steady and real. And in sharing his story, he became an inspiration to others. Max's journey showed that anyone could take control of their mind, not by chasing shortcuts or quick fixes, but by building discipline day by day. Max's story reminds us all that we are him. We face the same challenges, the same doubts, the same desire to break free. And like Max, we can find strength in Musashi's teachings, pushing through setbacks, trusting the path, and focusing on small wins. In the end, it's not about reaching perfection, but staying committed to the journey, because real mastery is one step at a time.